Hello, and welcome to the PD Induction on Lesson Planning. This is merely a brief overview meant to remind you of key features to remember when planning your lesson on a day-to-day basis. So it's a good idea before we begin to just briefly give an outline of the teaching context within which you'll be planning your lessons. King Saud University's preparatory year program is one of the largest English language institutions in the world. The majority of our students are recent high school graduates, and while many of them are excellent students, they do lack certain university-level skills necessary to succeed at degree level, one of which is English language proficiency. The preparatory year program, or the PYP, serves as a bridge between high school and university to aid them in their future studies. Only after passing the PYP are they admitted into their degree programs. It's also important for you to know that the English language department of the PYP seeks to promote a strong student-centered environment in order to facilitate effective language learning within a short time period. The syllabus set by the curriculum unit can be somewhat rigorous with respect to the amount of textbook material that is to be covered. So, given this context, daily lesson planning is critical for the success of our students. Now, we are all coming to this program with prior lesson planning experience, and therefore the focus of this induction is not to instruct on lesson planning, but rather to review some of its key elements and the resources you have at your disposal. The key elements we would like to address are clear lesson objectives, logical staging, and meaningful feedback sessions. So, when we begin our daily lesson planning, the first place to start is with the lesson objectives in mind. These lesson objectives will be provided to you by the curriculum unit and are aligned with the textbook you will be teaching. So knowing what the lesson objectives are better help you to plan the necessary stages to help your students achieve these objectives. This picture nicely illustrates this point. As teachers, we guide our students through the journey of the lesson to help them reach the final destination. It is important that we keep them on track, and this is why we should logically plan each stage of our lesson with the final learning objective in mind. In other words, we need to ensure that each stage of our lesson plan builds on from the previous one. Practically speaking, this means that you need to not just simply use the textbook, but exploit it in order to plan cohesive lessons. Do keep in mind that while these textbooks were carefully chosen for our student population, no coursebook is perfect, and therefore it is your role as the teacher to create, edit, and adapt activities as you see fit, keeping the needs of your own students in mind. Let's look at an example. Let's say that the curriculum document for your level specified that these 2 pages should be covered in one lesson. Rather than simply following the pages exercise by exercise, you may want to create your own warmer, edit the personal identity card, adapt the listening activity so that, for example, students listen twice to the recording, and have students check their answers in pairs, none of which are specified in the book. As part of our logical staging, it is important to make sure that each stage of our lesson, which may consist of a task or activity or teacher instruction, is followed by a stage that checks students have understood what they've just done or been exposed to. In other words, we always need to include a feedback session. These feedback sessions are critical as they are essentially the only means for us as teachers to answer the following important questions. How do I know my students have really understood this? Were they practicing accurately? Do they need more practice or explanation before moving on in the lesson? In addition to this, feedback sessions are important as a means of preparing for future stages in the lesson, as well as giving students opportunities to self and peer correct. Let's take a look at an example. So, imagine you've just pre-taught 5 vocabulary words found in a reading text about world-famous buildings. Here are 3 examples of ways to get feedback from your students to check they've understood these words. Student-led feedback. In this scenario, a student volunteers to come to the front of the classroom and with the help of his classmates match words to their definitions on the interactive whiteboard. The student's classmates call out the answers and they can correct each other. In this particular scenario, we can see that the teacher takes a backseat role and allows as much student interaction and correction to take place as possible. Alternatively, you can opt for teacher-led feedback, in which you ask a number of concept-checking questions about the vocabulary words. For example, one of the target vocabulary words was enormous. You could ask the following as quick concept checks. If I say a building is enormous, do I mean it's very small or very big? Who can give me an example of an enormous building here in Riyadh? As a third option, you could choose to do both kinds of feedback, in which after students have matched the words and checked their meaning, you then follow this with your concept checking questions. So, to recap, do keep in mind the following key elements when planning your daily lesson to create effective, cohesive lessons. Do remember that the more you plan, the better your lessons will be. This is necessary not only in creating an engaging classroom for our students, but also to aid you in preparation for your formal assessed observation during the semester. Given the importance of lesson planning and teaching effectively, please note that lesson planning is a requirement of the English Language Skills Department. As in any educational institution, evidence of lesson planning is required, and therefore you are asked to fill out a weekly lesson plan and take it with you to your classes. In the event of a buzz observation, this document will be checked by your observer. Although only an outline of your lesson plan is required, this document can be used to provide as much detail as you like. Of course, you're not alone when you're lesson planning. If you find that you need some help or perhaps just some inspiration, keep in mind all of these areas of support. Your fellow teaching staff. You'll be in a staff room with many other teachers who will be teaching the same content. It's a great environment to exchange ideas and activities. The Educational Technology Unit. KSU has an exceptional educational technology unit, which, in addition to giving training on how to use the interactive whiteboard and accompanying software, maintains an excellent blog. On this blog, you will find comprehensive resources such as e-versions of all the course books, as well as supplementary materials contributed by teachers. The Resource Room. Your local resource room has a variety of ELT materials you may find useful in planning your lesson. Your mentor. He or she is an experienced KSU teacher and will be able to help you if you have any questions. And finally, us, the Professional Development Unit. Please do come by our offices if you need any help. That marks the end of our lesson planning induction. Thank you for listening.